Hey, what's up everybody and welcome back to News Toast, and it should be a fun episode today. I mean, I know we've gotten pretty consistent updates for Activision Blizzard as of recent, and well, what do you know, that does continue on today, as it did get an approval in one region, while Microsoft is also going the extra mile to get it approved in other regions as well. Yeah, like I said, I know we've gotten a lot of consistent updates with Activision Blizzard, and it really feels like it's never ending by this point. Hopefully we get some more end results here coming soon, but nonetheless, we're going to talk about that today. Meanwhile, Xbox just released what might be one of the strangest products that I've ever wanted personally, so we'll get into all that a little later on, and a big game did leak out online ahead of its official release, so we're going to talk about that one as well. With that said, though, let's just go and jump right into things, starting off with The Witcher Remake. Now, they did announce this game about a month or so back, and they kind of described it as a reimagining rather than just a simple one-to-one remake. And that is starting to make more sense now, as it's been revealed that it will be a completely open-world game this time around. Now, the original game was actually split up into different zones, so this is actually a pretty big change. But really, with how technology has advanced, and with the addition of Unreal Engine 5, it does make a lot of sense to bring this game up to a more modern experience. With that said, I have seen some people be a little apprehensive about any type of change, but personally, when it comes to remakes for me, I do like when studios take the time to add new things that doesn't necessarily change the game story, the characters, or just the overall essence of the game itself, but rather changes that kind of improves the gameplay and just modernizes it a little bit. Now, sometimes that's just simple quality of life improvements, and that's something that actually really irritates me with some remakes where, you know, they put all this work into making the game look shiny and new, but then there's this very well-known problem and it is still in the game. I mean, take the time to, you know, improve those little things. But then there's also bigger changes sometimes that can pay off as well. Think about something like Resident Evil 2 as an example. The original had more of that set third-person camera angle, but with the remake, they changed that perspective to a more modern over-the-shoulder third-person view, and it worked out beautifully while still keeping the essence of Resident Evil 2. And I kind of look at The Witcher Remake in a similar way here. It being open world this time, it doesn't necessarily drastically change the game to where it's unrecognizable, but it could be a really nice addition that brings it more in line with a modern experience. So I actually do like this idea, but let me know what you all think about all this though. Would you prefer they stick with those split open zones like they did in the original, or do you like the idea of a more seamless open world experience? Yeah, let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. Next up, let's go and talk about a new, really strange product that Xbox put up on their Xbox Gear website. I don't typically talk about this type of stuff, but I thought that this one was worth highlighting for just how truly unique and strange it actually is, because you can now buy a miniature hoodie for your Xbox controllers. Yeah, you heard that right. A wearable hoodie for Xbox controllers. It costs $25, and as odd as this might sound, I mean, you can see it here on screen, but this thing looks like a surprisingly good collectible. I mean, sure, it's strange and it's kind of dumb, to be honest, but it's also eye-popping and kind of a weirdly cool display. It also might be a nice little conversational piece, because you have somebody over and they're gonna be like, what in the world is that? Your controller's wearing a hoodie. I mean, how strange is that? But you know, the thing about this hoodie is that it's absolutely ridiculous, but I kind of want it, you know? And I think that's the brilliance of something like this. It's so bizarre, but it looks good at the same time, that, yeah, you kind of want to add it to your collection, and that's why it's selling out right now. I mean, I'm sure it'll probably come back in stock since it's proving to be pretty popular, but there you go. I never really thought I'd be talking about a wearable hoodie for Xbox controllers, but, you know, life is kind of like that sometimes. It's filled with surprises. If you do want this thing, though, like I said, it is sold out, but you can still head over to their website, and you can add your email, and they'll notify you when it comes back in stock. Now, we also have a leak for PlayStation Plus. This is coming from Bill Kuhn, which has accurately leaked PlayStation Plus games since 2021. So yeah, this is pretty much about as good as official by this point. And according to them, December's PlayStation Plus essential lineup includes Mass Effect Legendary Edition, Biomutant, and then Divine Knockout. Now, this is actually a pretty good lineup of games in terms of quality, and really with something new as well. Of course, Mass Effect Legendary Edition, that's a known commodity here. This this really is one of the greatest trilogies ever made, bundled and updated in one definitive package. I mean, if you haven't already played this series already, and if you like RPGs, or if you like single-player games, and if you have PlayStation Plus Essential, do yourself a favor and download this game. You absolutely will not regret it. Then there's also Biomutant here. This game did have a lot of issues there at launch, which seemed to have deterred a lot of people, but it always had a really interesting premise, the atmosphere and its art style, and now with it coming over to PlayStation Plus, it might be time to jump in. I actually do really like this edition. But for me, the main attraction is actually Divine Knockout. This game isn't really getting a ton of attention online as of this moment, but this is a day one release for PlayStation Plus, and more importantly, I think it's one that has some potential. This is a multiplayer platform fighter similar to games like Super Smash Bros., but in Divine Knockout, instead it's set in a 3D environment, which will completely shift how it's played. I do think that it looks fun though. I mean, I'll have to try it out for myself and everything, but that's the beauty of these day one releases. I mean, I've said it countless times on this channel, but this is what I want to see from PlayStation more often. Invest in these day one releases for your subscription services. That, to me, is the best thing that you can possibly do. Now, not all of them will necessarily be super well-received games, but it's something for fans to look forward to on a monthly basis, and it's also something that fans will give a try. And really, for that matter, PlayStation Plus has brought forth some mega hits in the past, being Rocket League, and then you also have Fall Guys. Both of those were day one PlayStation Plus titles. So, I mean, who knows? Divine Knockout, this is another multiplayer style of game. It's a day one release for PlayStation Plus, so, I mean, it could end up being a big hit with millions of people jumping in thanks to its day one PlayStation Plus inclusion. Either way, Divine Knockout looks to be available on December 6th. Let's go and talk about this Activision Blizzard situation again, though. Really, the last couple weeks have been pretty crazy with just everything that's happening around this buyout. There's been a ton of drama with Sony and Microsoft going back and forth, but here we do have some regulatory updates that could be pretty significant in the long run and how all this could eventually end. First, though, is that this buyout did get approved in another region, being Serbia this time. This follows Saudi Arabia and Brazil, and much like them, it's an unconditional approval. Now, that's kind of the part, though, that we're going to zero in on today, though. While it's certainly good news for Microsoft that another region has approved the acquisition in unconditional terms, the big regulatory bodies are still kind of looming, being the FTC, the CMA, and then also the EU. These three are the ones that seem to be giving Microsoft the most issue. At the very least, they're scrutinizing it much more, and they're really asking a lot of questions on whether or not this buyout could pose any type of problem. Now, whether or not we agree with all of the different concerns brought up by these regulators, yeah, that's a little bit of a different story, but it does seem like it's a little bit more iffy in these particular regions. And one thing about Microsoft is that they want to get this acquisition done sooner rather than later. This buyout is holding them up in various different ways, and they don't want this buyout to be drawn out for an extended amount of time. I mean, if you think about it this way, earlier this year, Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, they were acquired by the Embracer Group. There was a lot of speculation that Microsoft was really interested in them, but they can't buy any other studios because of this particular buyout. So again, it is in their best interest to get this done quick and with as little friction as possible. And that's not just because of Xbox, but that's just for Microsoft, the company as a whole. Well, one way that they can do that is to be proactive and alleviate any type of concerns these regulators might have. And well, that does appear to be what they're currently doing. According to a new report by Reuters, Microsoft is now preparing to offer the EU concessions here in the coming weeks. Now, really, I think by this point, this is to be expected. We've talked about this pretty extensively on the channel, but based on the verbiage that we've seen thus far from regulators, it does seem like they might want a little extra assurance that Microsoft is going to, kind of stay true to their words and keep Call of Duty on PlayStation going forward. That there really seems to be the focal point from pretty much all of the regulators, which also echoes what Sony has been complaining about as well. So putting this into writing might fix some of those problems, and according to Reuters, that's exactly where we're heading. They did post this. Microsoft's remedy would consist mainly of a 10-year licensing deal to PlayStation owner Sony, another person with direct knowledge said. Now, I do find this statement, let's say, interesting in the aspect it's not really specific. It doesn't flat out mention Call of Duty, so it's kind of hard to say if this is only referring to Call of Duty or not, But what we do know is that this does echo what we've already heard. Last week it was reported that Microsoft just earlier this month, they offered Sony a 10-year contract for Call of Duty, in which Sony declined to comment. So this concession to the EU might be the same offer that they made to Sony prior, but this time it's taken out of the hands of Sony, which I'd actually say that that's a good thing. Like I've said before, I've believed for a long while that Sony is actually being disingenuous. I firmly believe that Sony is just using Call of Duty as an excuse to try and shut down this acquisition. I think they know for a fact that Microsoft has full intentions on keeping Call of Duty multi-platform, but they want to lead these regulators to believe otherwise, because that right now is their best argument to keep Microsoft from picking up Activision Blizzard. So I think that's why Sony declined to comment before. But at the end of the day, it's really not up to Sony. It's whether or not these regulators see that as a fair offer. So we'll see if the EU considers a 10-year contract as quote-unquote adequate. Now, we're also hearing similar things from the FTC as well, though. We talked about that last week, but it sounds like concessions could also be made there. And honestly, I wouldn't doubt if we see similar things from the CMA. Microsoft is showing that they're more than willing to work with these regulators, and now it's just kind of seeing if they can get on the same page. I really think that as long as Microsoft can keep Activision Blizzard games exclusive to Xbox Game Pass and include them day one, that, I think, is what Microsoft truly wants here, alongside that mobile division in King. This acquisition really doesn't seem to be about platform exclusivity, or at least when it comes to Call of Duty. As always, though, we'll kind of see if regulators bite here, but we are getting closer to hearing some official rulings, as both the EU and the FTC could actually give their decisions here in the next couple months. Alright, now we do also have some new information on December's big release, being the Callisto Protocol. Some people have gotten their hands on this game just a little bit early, and a ton of footage has now found its way online. One player even leaked around 2 hours of gameplay. Now, as always, I'm not going to post that footage on my channel or anything like that, but there's a few things that does come from this leak worth talking about. First off, if you're concerned about spoilers, just gotta be careful over the next few days. I'd really say just kind of avoid Callisto Protocol comments on social media if you're worried about that type of thing. As for the gameplay itself, though, most people do seem pretty impressed. The animations and just the overall brutality, it seems like it's pretty impressive. But there does seem to be an issue with its performance dipping, and that has drawn some concern. Now, I think one of the reasons it's drawing concern is because it was also just announced that its review embargo won't be lifted until it basically launches on December 2nd. And some people look at that kind of thing as a bad sign. I don't personally. I've seen plenty of games that don't lift their review embargo until the day of release review very well. But some people out there do get concerned by that type of stuff. What I can say, though, is that supposedly the Callisto Protocol will be getting a pretty beefy day one patch that's going to be about 26 gigabytes. So, I mean, if there truly is any performance issues with these leaks here, that might be fixed up with that day one patch. So just kind of keep that in mind. That is one of the reasons, though, that it's always kind of important to keep in mind that leaked footage isn't always necessarily finished gameplay. Either way, though, you can still always wait for reviews and a more technical analysis from places like Digital Foundry if you want to. For the time being, though, if you really want to see that leaked footage, you might be able to find it if you look around. It seems like a lot of that footage was actually taken down, but this is the internet that we're talking about here, so you might be able to find some still. Nonetheless, Callisto Protocol is right around the corner, as it will release on December 2nd. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day. That we're asked you all, what game releasing in December of 2022 are you most looking forward to? And as you all can see here, as we just talked about, the most anticipated game is the Callisto Protocol with 49% of the votes. Then 25% of you all voted for High on Life, 14% of you voted for Final Fantasy Crisis Core Reunion, and then 6% for Marvel's Midnight Suns, and 6% for Other. But yeah, Callisto Protocol, I mean, like I said before, this is the most anticipated game for the month of December, and it's pretty easy to see why. This game looks absolutely fantastic in my opinion. It is coming from the Dead Space creator as well, Glenn Schofield, so there's pretty high expectations for this one. Now we'll see if it can meet those expectations, but based off of the gameplay that we've seen so far, all the different trailers, it's looking pretty good. Now, as for High on Life, though, this is a day one Xbox Game Pass release. I actually think this one looks really good myself. It is coming from the Rick and Morty co-creator, and the developer is Squanch Games, which previously made Trover Saves the Universe. Now, that's quietly actually a pretty good game. I played that on PlayStation VR years ago, and High on Life, I mean, it looks like it's a step beyond just that. I mean, you have guns that's kind of talking to you. It looks like it could be pretty humorous. And the fact that it is coming to Xbox Game Pass day one, yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. I'm also a pretty big fan of Final Fantasy, so seeing them bring back Crisis Core, which looks like a pretty major upgrade compared to that PSP title, pretty excited to see that one come back. But I mean, you kind of look at this lineup here in December, it looks like a pretty good month overall. Looking through the comments, I saw several mentions for Need for Speed Unbound. River City Girls 2 was mentioned. I'm actually pretty excited about that one, as the first game was pretty awesome. Also, Dragon Quest Treasures was mentioned, Unchained Echoes. That's a pretty interesting day one JRPG coming to Game Pass. And then even the Witcher 3 update was mentioned. Again, I mean, I'd really say that December sounds like a pretty good month for gamers overall. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.